Hey Jack, welcome to New Orleans, man. Would you just start off by telling a little bit about you and then how this came together.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Jack Stoll. Went to college at Nebraska. As far as my years in the NFL, I spent the past 3.5 years in Philly. Spent last offseason with the New York Giants and finished the year with Miami. So it was a wild year last year to say the least. And I'm hoping that coming to New Orleans will be a little more stable and looking forward to coming down there. It's been awesome just in the time I've spent there, so I couldn't be more excited.
So being in Philadelphia, you probably had a little bit of connection there with Kellen Moore. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who he is as a coach and kind of what you're expecting, fired up about him?
Yeah, absolutely. Kellen was an unbelievable guy. I got to work with him for about 2.5 months last year. He's one of those guys who, number one, he cares about his players. He's always going to put them in the right position, and he'll do everything he can to make sure that all the players are successful, which I think in turn leads to a team being successful in an offense. So he's a guy he's a brilliant offensive mind. And, one thing I got to give to him is, especially just being in Philadelphia, is just seeing how he adapted his offense to the personnel that they had in Philly. And that's something that I thought was phenomenal. He had his system that he had with, Dallas, with LA. And then when he took it to Philly, he really saw the personnel and adjusted his system accordingly to make it successful. And I think that that's something that's very difficult to do. And, I got to give him all the credit in the world because obviously it worked out pretty well for him. So, he's an unbelievable guy to work with and, work for. So I'm really pumped to be back with him and can't wait to get things going down there in New Orleans.
What is that's like instability? Like when you go through a year like you did last year, or you're switching teams, what is that like as an NFL player, and how did you handle it?
It's just part of the NFL. I think a majority of people at some point will go through some version of that. And, I think some of it just ended up being, some things just didn't work out. And it's just really just persevering at the end of the day. Listen, we get to go play a game for a living. That's something that's awesome. And, I never take for granted. So regardless where I'm at, if that means moving 3 places in one year, I'm willing to do it. Obviously, you don't want to do that. And, my goal this year is to be in New Orleans for, all the whole 12 months. That's my biggest goal. And, hopefully farther than that and on. But, it's you get to play a game for a living. And that's awesome. And so, there is some instability with there. It's tough logistically when you're moving, trying to figure out a place to stay for a couple months here, there. But listen, at the end of the day, it's all worth it. Like I said, we play a game for a living. And as long as I'm keeping cleats on my feet, I'll be a happy guy.
And what were your takeaways of just kind of how Kellen likes to use tight ends in his offense?
I think the way he uses tight ends, I think number one, like I said earlier, he does a great job of seeing the personnel that he has and adjusting to it. Um, I think he uses tight ends in a multitude of ways. You look at who he had in LA, who he's had in Dallas, and he does a good job of getting them involved in the pass game, in the run game. And, I think he just does a good job of implementing the players that he has with the system that he wants wherever he's at. And so, I'll be interested to see how that shakes out in New Orleans. But I know one thing's for certain, if you look at his track record, he's always used a couple tight ends out there, in the game plan, which is, obviously it's a tight end is something you love to see. So I'll be curious to see how everything shapes up. But I know there will definitely be some tight ends in the game plan, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Jack, you came into the league as undrafted free agent. What was your mindset at that time? And here you are throughout the years here getting ready, for the Saints. How did you keep that mindset to keep on, competing in the NFL?
Well, I think one unique thing with my situation was, I ended up getting a knee injury my senior season. My last college football season was the whole COVID season. And, unfortunately, week one, I went out there against Ohio State, caught a ball over the middle, and then ended up having to get surgery on my knee. And so it wasn't the most fortunate way to end my college football career. So my big mindset coming into the NFL was, making sure teams know that my knee's healthy, and I tried everything I could to prove it. So, but that kind of lit a fuel in me and, has kept me hungry throughout the years and just reminds me that, I have just that much more to prove being an undrafted guy. And, that's just the reality of the situation is, if you're drafted, that means a team believes in you enough, to come out and do things on the football field. So, being undrafted, it just shows me every single year I got to go out there and prove myself just that much more. And, has made me hungrier throughout my career. So I think it's a blessing at the end of the day. And, I couldn't be more happier and prouder to say I'm an undrafted guy who's, still making it in the league and looking forward to the years to come.
Hey, Jack, hopefully a fun one personality question here for you.
So,
Just curious, because we've seen you do a couple different things throughout your career. If you had the choice between either a big catch and run opportunity or to decleat an unblocked defender off the edge, which way are you going?
ooh, okay. You know what? I might morph them together. Maybe catching the ball and being able to still decleat them with the ball in your hand. How about that one? That sounds like the perfect idea to me. You get the best of both worlds. Um, Gosh, I'll stick with that. Let's do it. Let's do it together. You get the best of both on that one.
I dig it. When you came in, you had that nice 40-yard dash time coming into the league and everything like that. Like, you feel like that's something that you're looking forward to maybe showcasing a little bit more? I mean, you carry the reputation of being the blocker, but I mean, obviously you have the physicality and some of the athleticism to show a little bit more in the game as well.
Absolutely. I think especially being an undrafted guy, one thing you learn is that you have to morph a role and make a role for yourself. And I think, my first 3, 4 years in the league, I've been able to do that more as, getting known as being a run blocking guy. And listen, like I said, at the end of the day, as long as I'm keeping cleats on my feet, I'll be a happy guy. But, I am really much looking forward to that. Just working with some of the guys that have been on the staff, Kellen Moore and Nuss before, even the tight ends coach, Chase, we were together at Nebraska in 16, 17. So, it's just one of these things where, I obviously have that reputation, but it's nice being able to come to a place like New Orleans where people have seen me catch the ball, whether that's in practice, whether that's in college, and know that that is something I can do. So, it's a phenomenal opportunity for me. And listen, there's one thing to have an opportunity. That just means you got to still go out there and prove it. So I'm looking forward to doing that and making the most of every opportunity I get and doing whatever I can for the Saints.
Did Chase play a role at recruiting you at Nebraska at all, or did?
He was a GA, and I believe that was his first coaching job. So we did get to know each other a little bit, recruiting wise. But I really got to know him more once I got there, my first and second year. Unfortunately, it was only 2 years because the staff that recruited me ended up getting fired after 2 years. And so we had a whole new staff change and stuff like that. But it was an awesome 2 years to work with him. And even Coach Dub, Keith Williams, who he was there with me for 2 years. And, and Kyle, there were a lot of people that were there at Nebraska with me that I've known. And so it'll be awesome seeing familiar faces in the building. And it'll be like good old times, except we got to go do it in New Orleans now.
Can you tell us some of your impressions real quick on Kyle in particular? It's somebody that, is new to the fan base here in New Orleans. You said you overlapped with him a little bit. Can you give us a little bit of insight in terms of personality, all those other pieces around him?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a phenomenal guy. Obviously he spent, like I said, some time with him before, and even he was in Dallas for a while. We chop it up with him, before games sometimes, playing him twice a year when I was with Philly. And he's one of those guys, again, a great football mind. I think everyone on Kellen's staff is a great football mind, and can whether that's again helping out with wide receivers like with what he does, or whether it's Chase being able to coach tight ends down. They're all just like everyone else, a phenomenal football mind, phenomenal people. And I can tell you this, everyone will enjoy coming in the building. And I think that translates into people playing harder, whether that's for your teammates, for the coaches, whoever it is. I think when you have a tight knit group, you play harder. And I think people like Kyle do a great job of bringing people together. getting the schematics of things dialed. So listen, I'm excited to work with him. I'm excited for, a lot of these guys on the staff and can't wait to get after it with them.
Jack, since your time in the NFL, how have you kind of seen the tight end position evolve a little bit and just kind of change with the landscape of these offenses changing these days?
I think tight end is, again, the Swiss Army knife of the NFL. You could look at a couple different systems and see how they're used, and they're used totally differently. But I think even if we're looking at the grand scheme of things, if you look at how tight ends were used 2 decades ago to now, it's night and day. You have some receiver types who can go out there and catch the ball, and they're not going to be asked to do too much in the run game. Or again, you'll have some more run heavy blockers, and I think the tight end position is ever evolving, and I think it's awesome seeing guys, whether they're some a run blocker, whether they're this guy who's going to go catch a lot of balls. Um, the position's evolving, and I think that there are multiple types of tight ends that can go make it in the NFL, and I think that's one cool thing. And you didn't see that 2 decades ago, and so I think the biggest thing with tight ends in the NFL is that you're seeing guys who can go out there and make a difference receiving wise. And I'm not saying that they didn't do that 2 decades ago, but you're seeing multiple dudes with eight, 900, 1,000 yard receiving seasons. And so they're getting more heavily involved in the passing game. They're getting more heavily involved in the run game. And I mean, you even see some, number two tight ends who are getting paid really well right now, showing that they're adding value to teams. And so things like that are great to see. And, seeing tight ends, their value growing in the NFL. So it's awesome to see, and hopefully we can keep it going.